Okay, let's dive right into Ezra chapter 6 today.
Sounds good. This chapter is really a turning point, isn't it, for rebuilding the temple in Jerusalem?
Absolutely. We see this fascinating mix of royal power, ancient bureaucracy, and divine action all coming together.
Yeah, it picks up right after that opposition flared up, remember? The local governor, Tatnai, had challenged the Jews' right to build.
Right, he sent that letter off to King Darius saying basically, hey, who authorized this? Prove it.
So Darius, needing to sort this out, orders a search of the royal records.
And you'd think they'd check Babylon first, right? The main
Oh,
capital.
exactly. The text says they looked in the archives there, in the treasury house. Logical place to start.
But surprisingly, that's not where the crucial document turned up.
No, it wasn't. This is where it gets interesting geographically.
Where did they find it then?
They found the scroll way over in Ecbatana in the citadel there. That's in the province of Media.
Ecbatana. Why there? I mean, wasn't that more like a summer capital or something?
It was. And finding it there, well, it tells us something about Persian record keeping. It wasn't all just piled up in one spot.
So maybe records were kept where they were issued or where the king happened to be at the time, a more distributed system.
Precisely. Spread out, but still effective enough to find what they needed eventually. And what they found was this memorandum.
A record of the original decree from King Cyrus.
Yes, the foundational one, dating all the way back to the first year of Cyrus's reign. And it was specifically about the temple in Jerusalem.
So what did it actually say? Was it just a vague, go ahead?
Oh, far from it. It was very specific. The main point was clear. Rebuild the temple as a place for sacrifices.
Okay, rebuild for sacrifices. Did it give details?
It did. Get this. It specified the dimensions. Foundations laid, 90 feet high and 90 feet wide.
90 by 90 feet. That's pretty substantial.
Definitely. And materials, too. 3 courses of large stones, then 1 course of timbers.
So they were just throwing something up. This is planned structurally.
Right. It implies a certain quality and permanence. And maybe the most surprising part, the funding.
Ah, yes. Who was paying for all this?
Cyrus's decree stated the costs were to be paid by the royal treasury.
Wow. State-sponsored rebuilding of a temple for conquered people. That's significant.
It really is. And it wasn't just the building itself. Cyrus also ordered the return of the temple items.
The gold and silver vessels that Nebuchadnezzar had taken from the first temple.
Exactly. They want to be brought back to Jerusalem and put back in the house of God, restoring the mains of worship, not just the place.
Okay, so Darius's officials find this incredibly detailed, supportive decree from Cyrus. Confirmation. What does Darius do now?
His reaction is fast and very firm. He issues his own decree based on Cyrus's.
And sends word back to Tatnai and the other who complained.
Yes. The message was basically, stay away, don't interfere with the temple work at all.
So a direct order to back off.
Completely. And he specifically says, let the governor of the Jews and the Jewish elders rebuild this house of God on its site. He validates their authority.
Okay, so he stops the opposition. But didn't Darius go even further than Cyrus, especially on the money side?
He did, and this is a really crucial detail. Cyrus said the treasury would pay. Darius ordered the expenses to be fully paid out of a specific source.
Which source?
The revenues of Trans-Euphrates, the very region where the opposition came from.
Wait, so the local taxes from Tatnai's own district had to pay for the temple building?
Exactly. It's a brilliant administrative move, really. It makes the local officials directly responsible for funding the project they tried to stop.
Talk about ensuring compliance.
Right. The text says it was so that the work will not stop. Removes excuses, ensures the money is right there.
That's practical. And he didn't just cover construction, did he? What about the temple services?
No, he covered that too. His decree lists required provisions for the daily sacrifices.
Like what?
Things like young bulls, rams, lambs for burnt offerings, but also wheat, salt, wine, and oil, whatever the priests needed, given daily without fail.
Daily supplies for sacrifices funded by the Persian king. Why? What was the stated reason?
The decree says it plainly, so that they may offer sacrifices pleasing to the God of heaven and pray for the well-being of the king and his sons.
Fascinating. So a kind of spiritual insurance policy for the Persian monarchy, supporting local worship for royal benefit.
That seems to be the idea presented here, a mix of pragmatism and perhaps a genuine belief in the power of pleasing various gods within the empire.
And Darius was really serious about this decree. The penalty for ignoring it was Intent.
Oh, incredibly harsh. Terrifying, actually. Anyone altering the edict would have a beam pulled from their own house,
Okay.
be lifted up and impaled on it, and their house turned into a pile of rubble.
Impalement and house demolition. Yeah, that's sending a message. Don't mess with this order.
Definitely. And he adds another layer invoking the god of the temple itself.
How so?
He says, basically, may God, who has caused his name to dwell there in Jerusalem, overthrow any king or people who tries to change this or destroy the temple.
So he's putting himself and future rulers under the potential judgment of Israel's God regarding this specific building.
Yes, it's quite a statement. And his final command is simple. Let it be carried out with diligence.
No room for argument there. And what happened next? Did Tatnai comply?
According to the text, yes. Immediately and diligently. Tatnai, Shethar-Bozenai, all their associates, they did exactly what the king commanded.
So the opposition just vanished.
Yeah,
And the resources started flowing.
seems like it. And the
Yeah.
Jewish elders got back to building, and the text says they prospered.
They prospered. And wasn't there a link made to the prophets?
Yes, explicitly. It says they prospered under the preaching of Haggai the prophet and Zechariah.
So it wasn't just the king's decree. There was this spiritual dimension, this prophetic encouragement driving things forward too.
Absolutely, a combination of factors.
Mm-hmm.
Royal backing, local administration forced to comply, the people's work, and the spiritual motivation.
And eventually they finished the temple.
They did. The text says it was finished according to the command of the God of Israel and the decrees of Cyrus, Darius, and Artaxerxes, kings of Persia.
Wait, Artaxerxes too, another Persian king mentioned there.
Yeah, that's interesting. It might point to some later stage of work or final administrative details happening under his reign, showing continued Persian support.
Okay. And do we know when they finished this phase?
We get a very specific date. The third day of the month Adar in the 6th year of King Darius's reign.
A precise moment.
Yeah.
And finishing such a monumental project, especially after all the delays, there must have been celebrations.
Oh, absolutely. Huge celebrations. The text says the people of Israel, priests, Levites, the rest of the returned exiles dedicated the house of God with great joy.
What did the dedication involve? Sacrifices.
Lots of them. The list includes 100 bulls, 200 rams, 400 male lambs just for the dedication.
Big numbers, reflecting the importance of the event.
Definitely. And there was also a sin offering for all 12 tribes of Israel, 12 male goats, a symbol of national unity and cleansing, perhaps?
And then they organized the temple services, got things running properly.
Yes. They set up the priests and Levites in their divisions and groups for the regular service, following the instructions in the Book of Moses, restoring the traditional patterns.
And the celebrations continued, right? What came next?
Soon after the dedication, in the next month, Nisan, they celebrated Passover.
Passover in the newly completed temple. That must have been incredibly meaningful.
You'd imagine so. The text notes the priests and Levites had purified themselves, making sure everything was done correctly, ceremonially clean. The Levites handled the slaughtering of the Passover lambs.
And who actually took part in eating the Passover meal? Was it only the people who had physically returned from Babylon?
This is another really interesting detail. It says the Israelites who returned from exile ate it, together with all who had separated themselves from the unclean practices of their Gentile neighbors in order to seek the Lord, the God of Israel.
So, others living in the land joined them, people who weren't part of the original group of returnees.
It certainly suggests that. Perhaps local inhabitants who align themselves with the God of Israel or proselytes. It points to a community potentially broader than just the exiles.
That's significant for understanding who this restored community included. And the celebrating didn't stop there either.
No, right after Passover came the 7-day Feast of Unleavened Bread, also celebrated with joy.
And the text gives a specific reason for all this joy, doesn't it?
It does. It attributes it directly to God. The Lord had filled them with joy by changing the attitude of the king of Assyria so that he assisted them in the work on the house of God.
Hold on, king of Assyria? We've been talking Persia, Cyrus, Darius. Assyria was long gone by then. What's that about?
Yeah, that phrase always jumps out. Historically, it's confusing. Assyria hadn't been the dominant power for, well, quite a while.
So, is it a mistake or symbolic?
It could be symbolic, maybe using Assyria as a sort of general term for the ruling empire of the region, whoever it might be at the time. Or maybe it reflects a particular older source or tradition being used here.
But the main point isn't really about historical accuracy of the title.
Probably not. The theological point seems clear. They believed God had intervened to turn the heart of the powerful foreign ruler, the successor, to the powers that had historically oppressed them, maybe represented by Assyria from potential opposition to active assistance.
So it's underlining that theme of divine providence, working through even unexpected political channels.
Exactly. It reinforces their belief that God was behind the success, orchestrating events, even changing the attitudes of kings.
Okay, so looking back at Ezra 6, what really stands out? We've got these decrees, the bureaucratic details, the sheer persistence, this constant interplay between human action and, well, what the text calls divine influence.
I think it shows just how multifaceted big projects like this are. You need the legal frameworks, the decrees, you need the resources, the mandated funding, you need the people power, the builders and elders, you need the motivation, the prophet's encouragement, and crucially for this narrative, you need that sense that God is making it happen.
And those specific details, the dimensions, the stone and timber, the daily shopping list for sacrifices, the funding from local taxes, the penalty, the inclusive Passover, they make it feel very real, don't they? Not just a story, but something grounded.
They absolutely do. They show the practical, administrative, and logistical realities involved. This wasn't just wished into existence, it was built, funded, and organized within the complex system of the Persian Empire. And the celebrations show how vital it was for the community's identity and worship.
So we followed the thread. Searching for that old decree, finding it in an unexpected place, Cyrus's original generous terms, Darius's even stronger enforcement-focused commands, the building finally succeeding with prophetic help, and then these huge, joyful, and interestingly inclusive celebrations capped off by crediting God for turning the king's heart.
It's a narrative about overcoming significant hurdles to achieve something foundational, involving this complex blend of human agency, political power, and perceived divine intervention.
So as you think about this chapter, consider that intricate mix. Politics across different empires and reigns, the nitty-gritty of economics and funding, the detailed revival of religious practice, and the strong belief that God was actively involved, even shaping rulers' decisions. What might that complex picture tell you about the kinds of forces, both the ones we see and the ones we don't, that come into play when any community tries to achieve something really big and lasting, something central to who they are?